Lazerboy, what is the secret of your powers?
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Lazerboy podcast. This is a special episode where I'm going to be going over my top 10 films of the year 2001, in keeping with the tradition of past special episodes wherein we compiled top 10 lists for the year 1999 and the year 2000. Marking the 20th anniversary of those seminal years in cinema, I decided to do one for 2001, and stay tuned for an upcoming episode where I will do my top 10 list of 2002 with a very special guest. Again, you guys are listening to the Lazerboy podcast. You can find past episodes on thelazerboy.wordpress.com. That's our website and blog. And if you want to go direct to the source, just go ahead and type in the Lazerboy on YouTube and the YouTube search engine. Just type in Lazerboy with a Z. I believe we are the only results that show up for that. So please check out past episodes if you are so inclined. And be sure to check out our sponsor, PV Brands Payments, I should say, or PV Pays. They are a payment processing app that specializes in high-risk businesses such as CBD and online gambling and adult entertainment. So if you have bad credit, don't worry about that. Just go ahead and click for a free quote and make sure to mention the Lazerboy or Joseph to get a reduced rate or a special price on the rate. And they also specialize in converting crypto instantly. So if you're interested in that, please check out PV Brands Payment. That's our sponsor for this episode, and we thank them very much. So yeah, the structure of this episode is going to be very simple. It's just going to be me talking. I have a lot of past episodes where I just talk by myself. I couldn't get a last minute guest for this, and I didn't want to put them through homework of watching a bunch of 2001 movies. Even if they've seen it, it's probably been ages since they've went back and watched 2001 films. Speaking from experience, it's been such a while since I've seen a lot of these, save for a few films that I revisit often. Ocean's 11 is one of them. Black Hawk Down, Royal Tenenbaums, because it's my favorite Wes Anderson film, and Ghost World, which I've reviewed previously on the High Fidelity podcast with my co-host and friend Edwin. So we'll get into that later, but so this episode is going to be structured like that. It's going to be structured, I'm going to get into a general sense of what films were like in 2001, what are some milestones, what happened that year, just to give you a sense of context of what was going on during this time in culture and movies. Try to steer away from the politics because it's a very political year, obviously, with 9/11. And then I will get into the honorable mentions, all the stuff that I left out, and I also have a list of overrated films that I think the films that I thought were overrated in the year 2001. And then get right into the top 10 list from 10 to 1. And my criteria for this was simple. It's just really a mixture of personal favorite films and films that were culturally relevant. And I also take, popularity, worldwide gross, financial gross into consideration, because, I used to not consider that for my criteria in the past, but it's a huge staple of why they are popular and why they connect to people, to the culture as a whole, worldwide, not just domestically. But it's very, I would be remiss if I didn't take that into consideration with the quality of the film. People go to see it for a reason. It's if it's a bad film, maybe it gets a cult following later, as are some of the films on my list. But So yeah, that's the criteria of which I picked my top 10 list. So let's go right into, what was going on in 2001 film wise. Obviously, I, as I mentioned before, if you guys listen to, my top 10 lists of 1999 and 2000, I was a very different person back then. I was in college. Well, 99, 2000, I was in high school. 2001, I was in college. And it was very, very kind of politically minded. Listened to a lot of Rage Against the Machine, so I was very kind of leftist, lean to the left. I wasn't, full on socialist slash communist, what have you, but I was very, passionate about social justice, as is, any person in their youth would tell you they are. Everyone's idealistic. As you grow older, you start to become more pragmatic, which I have. Of course, I'm not like a full on, Republican, but I tend to lean more towards those views nowadays. A bit more conservative, I should say. I don't, believe in marching, and I do believe in freedom of speech, and it is your right to do that. But me as a 40-year-old, you know, man in the States, Asian American, I don't think that has anything to do with that. But I just feel like it's a bit of a waste of time at this point. It's like, if you want to make a difference, there are more efficient ways of doing it, more, intelligent ways of doing it. It's like this character from Ghost World says, you want to fuck up the system, get a job in corporate, fuck up the system from the inside. That's the smart, efficient way to do it. And, back then I probably hated that guy and said, fuck you. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to be punk rock, dye my hair green like Enid. And I don't understand where you're coming from. And of course, it's all a matter of perspective, because now I completely side with the guy from the comic book store and saying, you're stupid. Like, go do your thing. Your Cyndi Lauper 70s punk hairdo, whatever. I'm gonna do my shit and fuck up the system from the inside. But anyway, so long story short, I was a naive idealist college student. Probably didn't go to the movies as much after 9/11, because I was probably really embroiled by all of that anti I don't know what to say about this to not be political, but let's just say my mind was occupied by other things at that point in time. um, I remember I was in a political science class, or I think it was a history class. I think it was political science, and I sat in the back. This girl that sat next to me, we were both, kind of fuck the world kind of people. So I guess that's why we sat in the back. And this was on the day of 9/11. Maybe it could be a day after. And I went to school, I went to class, and our teacher, which is talking about, our professor, I guess, was talking about, how delicate everyone's emotions were collectively as a society, as the American people. So we just took time off of whatever our curriculum was, and we're talking about this, the state of affairs, like how did we feel, and no one could really. I remember no one could really kind of articulate themselves, appropriately. They were just speaking emotionally, probably. I didn't say anything. I'm not the kind of person that, even though I was politically minded more so in my youth, I declined from ever, speaking my mind. It was only in the context of like a creative class where I would say, shit on a movie that I thought was terrible, or praise a movie that I really loved. So that was where my mind was in 2001. I didn't get to see a lot of films, probably in the latter half. I remember seeing a lot, maybe in December, a lot of, all of the prestige films in 2001. But let me get right into, some landmarks cinematically. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, grossed $974 million worldwide, becoming the second highest grossing film of all time at the time. 2001 was the first time that two films released in the same year grossed more than $800 million at the box office, which was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Again, I'm reading from the 2001 in film Wikipedia. Shrek, released in May 18th, was released to critical acclaim and went on to win the inaugural Best Animated Feature Film Oscar the following year. June 22nd, The Fast and the Furious is released, launching one of the highest grossing franchises in film history. On August 8th, actors Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman divorce. I don't know why that's relevant. Well, I guess, the two biggest stars on the planet at the time, right? November 2nd, Monsters Inc. opens with the best ticket sales ever for an animated film and the 6th best of all time. November 16th and December 19th, the beginning of two acclaimed fantasy film series based on best-selling novels, Harry Potter and The Lord of the Rings, respectively, which took the two top spots of highest grossing films of 2001 of that year. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone grossing, like I said earlier, $974 million. 25 million shy of $1 billion. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring grossed close to 900 million, 883 million. Top five, two of those spots in the top five were animated films, Monsters Inc. and Shrek. Number 5 was Ocean's 11, and I don't want to go through the rest of the list. I can't believe Hannibal's on that list. That seems really out of place. Should have been Black Hawk Down, right? But anyway, going through this list of Oscars, best film of this year that took place the following year. Best film of 2001 was A Beautiful Mind. Best picture, I believe. Best director went to Ron Howard for A Beautiful Mind, which I still haven't to this day seen, and I couldn't put it on my list for that reason. I just never piqued my interest. It's about probably like an autistic, super smart guy, like a Stephen Hawking type of guy, which interests me. I'm a huge Big Bang Theory guy. Sheldon Cooper is one of my favorite characters, so don't think it's a comedy though. So probably gonna steer clear of that. Best actor Denzel Washington for Training Day. Best actress Monsters Ball Halle Berry. Best supporting actor Jim Broadbent for Iris. Jennifer Connelly got the best supporting actress for Beautiful Mind. Beautiful Mind won a lot. Wow, Kiva Goldsman won best adapted screenplay, and so on and so forth. Best original score, Lord of the Rings. All right, let's get right into my honorable mentions. I also have a most overrated film, so let me get the most overrated films out of the way first, since I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer here with the just shitting on films. So just get that out of the way first. Let me get the comedies out of the way first. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back from Kevin Smith. I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. I loved Clerks. Even Mallrats was, sophomore slump there, but I really did like all of his lighthearted comedies. Going into Dogma in 1999, which I may have given an honorable mention to in the best top films of 1999 list. But I don't know. I mean, he probably was kind of burnt out, but at this point, talking about Kevin Smith. But Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back seems like he wrote that overnight. None of the jokes landed for me. It was very abrasive, obnoxious jokes, which he tends to do, but he elevates it in a way that's more, I want to say, hip and sharp. Not just like another teen movie. It feels of a very specific voice and a very specific generation, right? Gen X. So very kind of mumblecore before mumblecore was a thing. All the indie darlings of the 90s really kind of thrived on that, right? So, but yeah, he just like went into the absurd with this film. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but American Pie 2, ditto American Pie 2, because I really loved the first one. I didn't really love it. I liked it. and it's probably something that I just was so close to because for nostalgic purposes, I was in high school at the time, and they were all like graduating, and they're trying to get laid, trying to de-virginize themselves, and just a cool premise. Very warm-hearted film for such a raunchy kind of premise. And then this film just, I don't know, degraded itself really low. I don't know. It's at one point, John Cho was peeing off a balcony into Stifler's head. I'm like, I guess it's a raunchy joke, but it's like that's really dirty. I don't know. Not just that. It's just everything felt stale, and it didn't. I guess the novelty wore off or something. But yeah, it didn't do anything for me. I thought it was overrated. Scary Movie 2. I remember kind of liking it at the time in the theaters. Kind of the death of the spoof film, after the Wayans kind of beat a dead horse with the scary movies and the white chicks and the many other iterations of stupid spoofy parodies that they've done. But I was a huge fan of Airplane and Hot Shots Part 2, Kentucky Fried Movie. Going back even further, all of those. Liam Naked Gun, Liam. Sorry, I forgot. I was gonna say Liam Neeson, but Leslie Nielsen, I believe, is the actor. Rest in peace. So I loved all the spoofs back then. They will definitely date themselves if you watch them now because they're referencing movies that were popular at the time. The what do you call it? Hot Shots is probably more relevant today because of Top Gun Maverick. So they should really do a Hot Shots Maverick or a Hot Shots Topper Harley. How do I remember that name? With I'm pretty sure Charlie Sheen snorted all of his residuals up his nose, so he needs another paycheck there. Not another teen movie. I haven't seen it, but probably sounds stupid. Blow, which I recently revisited. I did a selected films of 2001 in the past couple of weeks, and Blow was one of the films that I rewatched, and I just remember it being like really derivative of Goodfellas and just what else other Scorsese kind of crime dramas that have wall to wall pop soundtracks to gritty crime drama, big names, and Ray Liotta's in it. So Johnny Depp at the height of his power, though. Ditto Penelope Cruz, who also starred in Vanilla Sky this year, later in the year, which is on my top 10 list. But yeah, Blow. Ted Demme is a great director, very good director. Brother of Jonathan Demme, of course, of Silence of the Lambs fame. But Blow did nothing for me. I don't know what it's trying to say. I guess crime doesn't pay, which is really the bottom line of all these modern crime films, right? But the character that Johnny Depp plays just gets no sympathy, and I guess he's a loving father, but he's an absent father. He doesn't have a redemption arc, and he's kind of stupid. He just repeats the same mistakes over and over. So it's like, what am I supposed to do with this character? I don't know. I guess I'm probably just thinking about it too much and judging it too harshly, but that's what I thought of it now. This is probably why I never really revisit the film, and that's another thing that I've kind of established and dictated. I don't know if I'm using that word right. Don't you hate that when you try to use a good word but it just doesn't come to your mind fast enough? It's from all that weed, damn it. But yeah, maybe it's if you don't revisit it, there's probably a reason for that, right? So another overrated film, Michael Mann's Ali, which I put on my list of top 10 or top 5 Will Smith films, but when I saw it, I was a huge Michael Mann fan from Heat, and I think Collateral came out later, but Insider. So I was like really and highly anticipating this film, and it was just an overly long slog. Will Smith steals the show, though. Of course, he was born to play Muhammad Ali, and it's a very, you know, sprawling epic. And I love films that, you know, encompass multiple periods of time, decades, if not like his entire, you know, time in the spotlight. But yeah, I don't revisit it, so probably there's a reason for that. Again, that's going to be my criteria of if this stands the test of time. So that's another criteria for my top five list is if I revisited it. That's hard to say quickly, but if I revisited it, then more than likely it's going to be on my list, which is why my number one is on there for that very reason. Pearl Harbor by Michael Bay. Terrible script. Probably he had the right idea. I know he's has a great relationship with the Bruckheimers, or Jerry Bruckheimer, I should say. I don't know if there's more than one Bruckheimer, but yeah, distributed by Buena Vista and Bruckheimer Productions. I don't know what his studio or distribution company is called, but yeah, it was highly publicized that, you know, he clashed with the studio. He wanted a lot of more money than they gave him. Then he wanted to make it rated R and show the horrors of war, but you know, they wanted to maximize their profits. Of course, this is the same thing that happened with The Godfather and Paramount, right? They wanted to make it PG-13. Well, I don't know if they wanted to make Godfather PG-13, but they wanted to maximize the profits. You know, cut it to 2 hours instead of 2.5, 3. Again, I'm talking about The Godfather here. But yeah, they wanted to make it a family-friendly movie, being distributed by Disney and all that. So Michael Bay clashed with them a lot, and probably to the film's detriment, because you could probably tell that he phoned it in somewhat mid-production and just said, "Hey, you know, here's what you want. I'm gonna be on my way now." And I think he was kind of in, I don't want to say Hollywood jail at that point, but you know, when you clash with the studio like that publicly, there's a very good chance that your next film is gonna be very difficult to produce and get off the ground. And he probably, what it was Pearl Harbor 2001. I don't think he did another film until The Island, which was 0405. So 3 to 4 years is a long time for him, especially a guy that works that fast. So do the math. I mean, he probably took a break for a while. He was like, I didn't want to mess with studios that interfere. And it's probably a huge learning lesson for him. He had probably a great relationship with I keep saying the Bruckheimers, but you know, Bruckheimer Studio or whatever it's called. I'll just say Jerry Bruckheimer. He probably had a very, you know, contentious relationship, a contentious relationship with him at that point, and you know, moved on from that. I think he did The Island and then did like 50 Transformers movies after that. So that's where he was after that. So Pearl Harbor, again, you know, the love story doesn't work. I think it's not as bad as people say. Cuba Gooding Jr. was in that for some reason. I believe he wasn't like one of the Tuskegee Airmen, right? I think he was just like a deckhand. Obviously it's not one of the films I revisited, so I don't remember plot details, but I do remember Josh Hartnett and Ben Affleck and beautiful Kate Beckinsale. Jeez, man, how stunning was she, right? Oh man, when I started in, I was about to say The Departed, but The Aviator, playing that movie star that's gorgeous as well. But yeah, she's stunning in that film as well. Jurassic Park 3, not as bad as I remember, because, you know, put that up against any Jurassic World movie and it's, you know, 9 times out of 10 better than those films. Jurassic World could be, you know, probably contend with it, even though my favorite Jurassic World film was Fallen Kingdom. It's not really saying much, but yeah, Joe Johnston, he became, he did The Rocketeer, then he went on to do Captain America, The First Avenger, so one of his first films, and showing his, you know, action chops and seeing that he's got what it takes, you know. So I just put it up there just because, no Spielberg, and I was just kind of over it at that point. It's not even. It doesn't even feel canon. It's just like back to an island. I guess Sam Neill's back, but it's just like compared to the first two, especially the first one, it's really stupid. That's just my opinion, though. What do I know? Um, Lord of the Rings, the two tower. I don't know why I put the two towers on this, but it's supposed to be the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring. I think this is my favorite film of the trilogy. I remember just the hook of, we have to deliver this ring to, we have to destroy this ring, whatever the that juicy premise was, and then seeing those, sorry Lord of the Rings fans, but those like Grim Reaper type characters. I'm a huge fantasy guy. I play Magic the Gathering in my youth, so I love all that, fantastical magic, sorcery, elves, orcs. I love that lore, but and Peter Jackson did a fantastic job. He did the impossible, like this was probably one of the most hard, the hardest productions in history, and he brought it to life. So I don't want to take anything away from that. I just feel like there's something about the British sensibility, a little slow. It's the shortest of the three films, which isn't saying much. I know the Return of the King is like 5 hours. I'm embellishing there. That has like five different endings, right? But overindulgent much? Like, come on. There. I just talked to my friend Edwin on the phone, and I told him about, if you guys seen Clerks 2. I believe Randall, who's a huge Star Wars fan, was having a fan debate, fan war about which is better, Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, and he described it perfectly the way I want to sum it up. This is the three Lord of the Rings trilogy, the three Lord of the Rings films, and he just pantomimes like walking for like 10 seconds. And he was like, "This is the whole trilogy, just them walking, them walking." I don't disagree. It's fucking boring. All they do, I mean, again, we're oversimplifying it. It's not just that, right? It's the politics between, that the order of the elves and the humans and monarchy, right? Again, another British sensibility there. And you have to work together to this. I don't even. What do they say? I can't even remember. See, so one ring to rule them all is I believe is the catch line. Not for me, and I think it's overrated. To this day, I never rewatch it just because who wants to sit through 3 hours? The people who do a whole day back to back to back, Lord of the Rings marathon, they are the definition of masochist. Should put a picture of a Lord of the Rings fan, in the dictionary. Are there still dictionaries of masochist? But which brings me to my last overrated film, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Again, like, I know it's made for kids and it's one of the highest grossing franchises of all time. I do like, the Alfonso Cuarón, Prisoner of Azkaban, and I do like the last two, which, got a little bit darker. Of course, they're older now. The Deathly Hallows, part 1 and part 2. I like part 1 better, actually. It was really dark, and it has this really creepy jump scare moment, which probably why I never watch it. 'Cause I'm scared of jump scares. I could just plug my ears. That's because it's all in the sound, really. But yeah, I was never really a huge fan. Probably too old for it at the time. I was probably like too contrarian to like fully embrace it. But it's my last overrated film. I'm gonna get right through these honorable mentions because I thought I'd talk under an hour, but I'm already at the 30-minute mark here. So honorable mentions, gonna breeze through these. Memento, which should be on my list, but because I believed it was a 2000 film, I put it on my 2000 list. But I believe it was released on the film festival circuit in 2000, and theatrically in 2001. But for some reason, the Wikipedia, I go by the Wikipedia, so the Wikipedia had it under, 2000, or maybe I got it the other way around. Maybe it was I just saw it on IMDb and it said Memento 2000. So, Memento, great film, Christopher Nolan's kind of breakout after Following, which is kind of his. I want to say that's like his thesis. Following is more like his thesis film. It feels very under budgeted, and the ideas and the concept aren't fully fleshed out. But Memento really feels like his breakout film. So I don't want to get into it too much. Spy Game by Tony Scott, Robert Redford, and Brad Pitt. I wanted to rewatch it, but I just didn't interest me. I just like rest in peace Tony Scott. But I remember liking it. I thought it was okay. Again, I don't revisit it. So David Ayer had a great year. Training Day, and he also co-wrote The Fast and the Furious, which is also on my honorable mentions. Training Day, fantastic, directed by Antoine Fuqua. What's his name? Ethan Hawke, Denzel Washington. Great, man. That's a really gritty crime drama. Rookie cop, right? Ethan Hawke, and he gets the lay of the land with Denzel's crew of corrupt cops, and it has that famous line, right? Like, King Kong ain't got nothing on me. And Denzel took the Oscar that year, so he's doing something right. Very intense. He usually plays like the kind of straight edge, kind of like he's like the Black Tom Hanks. He's just like very like sanitary. So to see him kind of chew the scenery and play a bad guy, it's always fun to play a bad guy. So whenever these guys like Tom Cruise in like Collateral, he's always playing like a straight edge guy, the Boy Scout, right? So for him to like play an assassin in Collateral, it's very out of the ordinary and out of character for that actor's forte and repertoire. So Fast and the Furious, that was okay. Not as good as I remembered it, maybe just because it's great to see, all the young actors, and it's basically, Point Break with cars, like a charming criminal that the undercover cop kind of falls under his spell and decides to let him go, and embraces that culture that he was so adamant on taking down. Point Break was a lot more fun, Swayze and Keanu. I'll take those guys over Vin Diesel and R.I.P. Paul Walker, but his acting, Paul Walker, is a little shoddy back then. But they didn't cast him for his acting ability, it's for his looks and his action hero demeanor. So, but again, like, man, I forgot that Vietnamese guy Johnny Tran was the villain in that. But the reason why this spun off and became such a huge franchise was because of the charisma of the actors. They have great star power. Jordana Brewster, Michelle Rodriguez. So Rob Cohen, I mean, he did Triple X the next year with Vin Diesel, and then he did Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, which I have a lot of problems with, even though I'm a huge Bruce Lee fan. So it's not the director; it was the characters and the story. And Vin Diesel, Vin Diesel kind of broke out after that and turned that nothing movie into the huge franchise. So it's supposed to be like, I could see it as a good one-off as well, just this cool subculture of street racing. I love subculture kind of movies. I'm a huge fan of like Swingers and Go, which are both Doug Liman movies. Go about the rave scene, and Swingers about the kind of swing cocktail lounge lizard kind of very niche subculture there. So love Swingers. Swingers is my shit. Josie and the Pussycats, I want to talk about that for a bit because I love the idea of Well, I remember not wanting to see this film back in the day just because I thought it was, a typical rom com kind of brightly lit coming of age story, starring Rachel Lee Cook, Tara Reid, Rosario Dawson, Alan Cumming, Parker Posey. But the reason I piqued my interest so much, and it was one of the films I revisited, was because of the names. Harry Alfond and Deborah Kaplan, who are the directing duo of Can't Hardly Wait, which is like one of my favorite films growing up. If not a film I watched over and over on VHS, just because I love that concept of 24-hour time period, graduation, high school graduation, and you're just it's very nostalgic. I wasn't a huge high school guy. I kind of made myself an outcast, and I didn't join any clubs, didn't go to one single athletic event. Even though I was a huge sports fan, I probably knew some basketball players from class. But for some reason, like when high school was over, I felt really nostalgic, and I was just like missed it like instantaneously. Something about like being forced to be with these people. I didn't appreciate it until it's gone. So the last day of school, I was very emotional. Even went to the grad night, which was like at some weird ice skating rink and bowling alley. And I remember even like smoking weed with other people I never smoked weed with, and it was very something out of the ordinary. And so I mean, I just love Can't Hardly Wait. And Josie and the Pussycats is something I didn't think it was. I had no idea it was going to be like that. It's kind of an anti-commercial, anti-materialist, anti-consumerist story disguised as a coming of age, like musical film, right? It's about a rock band who rises into fame. There's subliminal messages that are kind of encoded in the production of their music. If you turn down all the levels, if you turn on the vocals and the instruments and the bass and the treble, all the levels, you could hear somebody saying, "Buy McDonald's, go to Target and buy green is the new orange, black is the new purple, and you're gonna love this, and this word is gonna be trending." So it's very relevant, so relevant to today, with everyone left and right kind of influencing what we should buy, what we should do, what we should search in our search engine, and think and listen to, what kind of music is popular. So it's a prevalent theme in 2001. Also with another film, Ghost World, which kind of preached, anti mass consumption, right? Like everything is being turned into a marketplace and a chain. There's Starbucks everywhere. That was another idea of Fight Club, right? Like I am not my fucking khakis, right? And I want to shop at IKEA and get everything on this IKEA list, right? And so going into 2000 and 2001, it was still a huge theme that filmmakers tackled, and this film did it really rather brilliantly, rather subliminally, because I had no idea that's what it was about, and probably the reason for its commercial failure, because people were expecting what I thought it was going to be, and it became like this over intelligent think piece on over consumption and materialism in America. So it really took me by surprise, and I highly recommend it. The only reason it was not on my list just because the film felt a little uneven, pacing wise, and the humor is great. It's very sharp. I just think there's something about it that's missing. It's probably not a film I'm going to revisit a lot. The music is kind of cool, but it doesn't have this it factor that I would go back to. Like it has soul, but it just doesn't have, I don't know, this indescribable kind of quality that makes me want to go back and watch it. Anyway, I've talked long enough about that. Let's move on to Hannibal, which I just saw like a couple of days ago, so that's pretty fresh in my mind. I'm a huge, if you guys listen to past episodes of the Lazerboy, my friend Dat, and I covered the Hannibal series on NBC, which I'm a huge fan of. I got him to watch it just for the purposes of doing a podcast on it in 2020 because, we had nothing to do during the pandemic. So I was like, let's watch the show and we can cover it. And I'm glad he was on board and he loved it. And it was the first time I've seen it since it aired. So, but again, I can't get Mads Mikkelsen, Hugh Dancy, and, Brian Fuller's version of Hannibal out of my mind when I watch this film. And that's saying something because I know when I read the books. I read, Red Dragon and Hannibal. When I read those books, and when you read books and you picture them in your mind, the characters, I don't picture Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter anymore. I picture Mads Mikkelsen because there's something about him. He's much more charming. He's better looking. Sorry, Sir Anthony, but he seems more kind of regal, more cultured, and he's foreign. Obviously he has. Mads Mikkelsen is Danish and he has a thick Danish accent, and there's a lot more nuance in his performance. I didn't want to turn this into a Hannibal the TV series, but it's unavoidable for me to think about because most of the plot details of Hannibal, the novel and the film, they reused for the purposes of the third and final season. The as yet final season of Hannibal. Hopefully they get the rights to it and do a season 4. Please do a season 4. Netflix, where are you? Brian Fuller, please do another one. But even so, it ended perfectly still. So, but yeah, they reused a lot of elements of the novel and this film for the first half of season 3. Sorry, like the first 7 episodes of the 13 episode season was devoted to Hannibal in Italy, in Florence, I believe. No, sorry, I don't know if it was Florence. So a lot of the, Mason Verger, disfigured Mason Verger, played here by Gary Oldman. He's having a lot of fun, but I could tell in the horrifying disfigured makeup, prosthetics probably. Even so, I liked Michael Pitt's version. Well, before he was disfigured, he was Michael Pitt, and somebody else played him after that. But so I can't really get that out of my mind. But take it for what it is. It is a little disjointed. All of the kind of bureaucracy, like the federal political stuff, still is very confusing to me. I get it. They're anti-feminist. Like, oh, she rose in the ranks too quickly, even though she's been there for 10 years. I'm talking about Clarice Starling, but it's obvious it's run by men and it's a male agenda, and we don't want you rising in the ranks. So they discredit her. Every mistake she makes, like they compound it. They give her such a heavy disciplinary action undeservedly, right? And she has to do things on her own. She has to be like a rogue kind of agent and catch Hannibal Lecter on her own, because they're not going to give her the resources, right? They suspended her. So all that was cool. The film was written by, I believe, David Mamet and Steve Zalen. Steve Zalen, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, but he wrote Schindler's List, and of course David Mamet is a huge playwright and a huge fan of his films. House of Cards, I believe it was. Is that it? No, something? Not House of Cards. Could be House of Cards. But he's a very great, subtle kind of confidence game writer. So I was expecting a lot from this film, and heavy-handed, underdeveloped. Ridley Scott couldn't even save it. Cool, shocking moments at the end, though, with the Paul Krenler, spoilers for Hannibal, but Paul Krenler's eating his own brain because Hannibal Lecter gave him some drugs, and he's sizzling a piece of brain right in front of him. He's like, eat this. He just chews on it. It was very good. Very shocking. Still, it's a very unforgettable image. Can't get that out of your head. But even so, couldn't make my list. From Hell. Just wanted to point this out real quick because no, sorry, not John Singleton. The Hughes brothers moved on from urban crime drama. I believe the last film they made before that was American Pimp, which is a documentary. Before that, they did Dead Presidents and Menace to Society. So they're moving on. They're trying to try their genres, and they have a fairly successful career. And From Hell is one of my favorite films. I love the lore of Jack the Ripper. I love Victorian literature. So any film that takes place in Victorian England, huge points for me. Johnny Depp, Heather Graham, a very gory film, very kind of weird and Lynchian. I haven't seen it in a while, but what I do remember of it stays with me. So, and I did revisit it a lot. So, could have been on my top 10 list. Could probably bump number 10 off of it. It depends on my mood, right? And time of the year. All right, going through these real quick again. Made, which is the kind of spiritual sequel to Swingers with Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn. I just love that dynamic between them, right? Like the straight edge of Jon Favreau. He's trying to just play the game by the rules. They're like, I don't want to say hitmen, but they're like Vincent Jules from Pulp Fiction. They don't kill people, but they're supposed to do the dirty work of like a mob boss or some kind of crime boss. And they're like, I paid you. You pick up whatever you're doing, and you do this thing. Apparently, they're trying to close some kind of business deal in New York. They're from L.A. and Sean Combs is in it. Puff Daddy, Faison Love, a bunch of other people. Jean Grey from X-Men. Forgot her real name. But yeah, I love that dynamic. Vince Vaughn is just a cool. He's always like causing trouble. He's very impulsive, right? He's always just getting him into trouble, like annoyingly so. I'm always just like, oh, just calm down, dude. Just like take it down. And if I were they fight a lot in the film. I think one of his character traits is he was trying to be a boxer, and he failed because he was like 5-5-1 or something like that, and so he's trying to move on and make some more money to raise his to support his stripper girlfriend and her daughter who he loves. So a lot of I didn't revisit it a lot back then just because I thought it was going to be another Swingers. I thought it was like a lesser Swingers, and I didn't get all of like the schmoozing of the businessman. Like I didn't get that you need to do that because as a kid I didn't understand matters of business at all. Like yeah, you gotta loosen him up, take him out for drinks, maybe buy him a hooker or two, and then you can talk business, and then he'll trust you, right? You gotta loosen him up. I didn't get that at the time. I was like, just make the business deal. What's so hard about that, The Score, which I wanted to revisit but didn't have the time, starring Edward Norton, I believe is Robert De Niro and Marlon Brando. Wow. If I'm not mistaken, that's a pretty damn great cast. Directed by Frank Oz, who is the voice of Yoda. Didn't get a chance to watch it. Rush Hour 2. I think they're in China at that point, right? Brett Ratner, he fall from grace, right? After Rush Hour, and what did he do before that? I think it was like, fuck, I can't remember. He did something. Rush Hour wasn't his first film. I don't want to look it up. Osmosis Jones and Shallow Hal. I was a huge Farrelly Brothers fan. A lot of gross out humor in Osmosis Jones, obviously. Bill Murray's sick, and then it's like a combination of live action and traditional 2D animation. The hero is Chris Rock, right? He's some kind of germ. I think he's like a germ trying to fight other germs. I don't know. I forgot what the premise was, but I remember just loving that high concept. Poor choice of words. Shallow Hal, cool concept. He's like, he gets hypnotized by that one dude, famous guy. I forgot. Hate it when I can't remember names. Very unprepared, but yeah, he gets hypnotized by that famous like guru, and he sees like he's a shallow guy, right? He just dates beautiful women. Jack Black's character, and then he gets hypnotized, and then he sees the beauty in people. Like whoever has a beautiful personality, even if they're like insanely obese, he'll see them as a pretty girl, right? Like Gwyneth Paltrow with a fat suit looks like Gwyneth Paltrow. So, and then at the end, I think he ends up with the fat Gwyneth Paltrow, and he doesn't care, right? So, Jason Alexander's in this for some reason. He has a tail. Moving on to Enemy at the Gates. I love this film when I saw it in theaters, just because I love the idea of snipers. You know, like I love the Barry Pepper character in Saving Private Ryan, and then the idea of like two snipers from opposing forces like playing chess with each other, which is the Jude Law character. He's like a Russian low-level soldier who becomes a hero when he takes out some top-ranking officials from the Third Reich, and then moves on up to being sniper division, and then faces off with like a very high-ranking sniper who's sent into St. Petersburg, one of the big cities in Russia, to take care of the sniper because he's bad for German morale. He's stirring up all these headlines in the papers, and he's their hero. So of course they have to put out that fire. And Ed Harris playing a younger version of himself in Westworld, just loving to kill people, right? God, great role for Ed Harris. The only thing I hate about this film is they're speaking in English, which I get it, no subtitles, some more tickets, but it's like, I watch that now and I'm like, dude, Russians don't speak English like fluently, and if they do, they're not going to speak it in Russia to other Russians. Same thing for Germans, and they don't even have an accent. Whatever. I guess it's supposed to be like filtered. They're supposed to be speaking Russian, but through the filter of this film, we hear it in English, so we don't have to read subtitles. Waking Life. Moving on to Waking Life. Sorry, abrupt segue there. Waking Life by Richard Linklater. The rotoscope version of Slacker. Just great high concept. People talking about big ideas and just weaving in and out, and has a story. I mean, the guy's dead, and this is like his waking life. This is his kind of final dream before he goes off into the next world. Played by the guy who's in the kid from Dazed and Confused. Heist by David Mamet. I really wanted to revisit this, but just didn't have the time. I remember loving it. Gene Hackman, I believe Delroy Lindo's in it. I remember being a huge fan of David Mamet, and this is one of his like last couple of films. He didn't make a lot of films after that because he went back into theater, I believe. So Amelie, not so much I can say. Just a very charming, colorful French film, and who doesn't love that kind of stuff, even if you are like into death metal or something. Maybe take a break, have some counter programming from the Lost Boys, and watch some Amelie. I don't know what the hell death metal people watch, films they watch. So Donnie Darko, I really didn't get the hype. A friend of mine, I believe, we watched Neon Demon together, and she was like, oh hey, that was the girl from Donnie Darko. I was like, never saw it. Like, oh, you should see it, very Lynchian. You're into David Lynch. And what was that girl's name? Not my friend, but the girlfriend. Fuck. Donnie Darko's girlfriend. But she was in Neon Demon in 2016. And Donnie Darko is very circular, very loopy. I think it's just try too hard to be cool. Very kind of pretentious. Cool high concept, like dreamlike mood, but it just didn't do anything for me. The two Gyllenhaals are in that. Very notable. Alright, after an hour, let's get right into my top 10 films of 2001.
Bobby and I have been friends since we were like almost born.
Raped Allie. Treats everyone like shit.
So what are you gonna do, Lisa?
He's the source of everybody's troubles.
Are we really gonna do this?
Scott deserves to die.
Dead! 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 Dead!
Turn those goddamn lights off!
Is he dead yet?
Getting there.
Starting with Black Hawk Down, number 10. I just watched this last night, and I remember really loving all aspects of the production of this film. So at face value, I really respect this film. Such a stunning achievement of, production design, choreography, like scheduling, like getting all those people, like any war film and film that requires such a large quantity of human beings on set, not to mention the crew. You have to manage these people. I can't fathom how that thing was produced. And so that aspect alone just kind of blows my mind. But I'm a huge fan of war films. All war films are kind of anti-war films at its core, right? We need to show the horrors of war. But at the same time, it's like kind of promoting war. It's like, hey, if you die, you're going to die with glory. And look how badass you are holding a rifle, So I'm very kind of conflicted about war movies, which, wow, it's right there in the genre of the film, right? War film. But this film was nonstop action, which I really loved as a younger viewer. I loved action. But some of these, watching it just recently, some of these character arcs kind of make no sense. We're introduced to the Josh Hartnett character, Everett, is a lieutenant, and he has to lead kind of his little Delta squad for the first time, and he's an idealist. And by the end of the film, it's like, why does that matter? Did he learn anything from his idealism? Like, he lost some people, everyone lost some people. That it was just like a story of this operation. They're supposed to extract some Somali warlords out of this location, and it goes horribly wrong for some reason. It's not really clear, because I guess the intel was bad, or a combination of that, and a combination of they underestimated the spirit of these people and their artillery, because it seemed like every Somalian had a gun, had a AK-47 in this film, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, did they not do the due diligence? They did not get the intelligence right. Like, that general is just completely incompetent or something. Like, he led them in there to die, pretty much. So from that perspective, I'm just like, why are you so incompetent to do that? Like, why would you risk American lives for something that you knew would be unsuccessful? I don't even think they extracted who they needed to extract. They extracted a bunch of prisoners. What were they supposed to do? What are they going to do? Torture them for intel? So it's just, that wasn't even the end game. So you can tell from a plot perspective, this film really frustrated me. At the same time, it sounds like I'm saying a lot of more negative things about this. Why is it on my top 10 list? But I respect it for what it is. They're showing how it went horribly wrong, and the cast of this film is sprawling. It's epic. It's all these names that became big, right? Tom Hardy, which is the biggest name out of that group. Josh Hartnett, who kind of faded away into relative obscurity nowadays, but Tom Sizemore, I don't know, I'm naming the washed out guys first. Eric Bana, Orlando Bloom, Ewan McGregor, so many like big names, right? So I love how like kind of war films like Saving Private Ryan or Band of Brothers, they're like a jumping off point for up and coming actors, right? I forgot who was in Band of Brothers, but again, if you look up that cast, you're gonna see like at least 10 names that was their jumping off point, right? That was their rise to stardom. And something about war films, it prepares you. It prepares you to. It's like the basic training camp of real Hollywood films, right? Because you have to. It's all downhill from there, because that's the hardest kind of production you're gonna have to work on, because you have to work with so many people, and you have to. It's physically demanding. It's probably emotionally demanding, and you have to work with all these. Like just looking at like Tom Sizemore and William Fichtner and all these like kind of, I don't know if they're really hard asses in real life, but like just to be all around those like really, I don't want to say difficult, but like very, I don't know, striking personalities. it must be hard to work with so many of those personalities. And that alone, I was just thinking about that during the film. I was like kind of drifting away and thinking, wow, like how did all these people get along? Like some of these people probably had fights and then probably just went into their trailer and didn't talk to each other for the rest of the production or something. You know, it's like something like that is bound to happen on a production like that. So I'd never thought about this stuff when I was a kid. I was just like, oh, action, rifles, bombs, that Black Hawk went down, cool. Oh, Jeremy Piven was in it for some reason. Ron Eldard, like Justified and Super 8 was in it. All right, I'm gonna move on. I've talked about this too long. But Black Hawk Down, that's my number 10. Ridley Scott. It's like a 2.5 hour film. Number 9, Ocean's 11. Really fun time. Soderbergh is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. He's very diverse. He doesn't make the same film twice. Maybe, you know, his sequels like the Ocean's trilogy, but even those films are distinctive. Like Ocean's 12 was European. You know, they had to pull off this heist to pay back Benedict. And then obviously 13 was probably the only one that kind of seemed like they're doing the same thing back in Vegas, but the stakes were different. And it's Al Pacino this time. So even the heist they pulled off was different, you know, so it's not even the same in that regard. Same cast, maybe, but different dynamic. I had a lot of fun with this. It was number 5 for a reason because of the star power, probably where all the budget came from. Distributed, produced by Warner Brothers, Village Roadshow, which was huge back in the day. And, you know, one of those underrated franchises. It's not like a fantasy action, not a Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings by any stretch of the imagination, but held its own. You know, was good enough, financially successful enough to warrant 2 other films. So it's coming off a great little series of films here. Aaron Brockovich and Traffic took home the Oscar for Traffic the following year. I believe Traffic was my number 1 film of 2000. If you guys want to listen to that episode. So that's number 9, Ocean's 11. Number 8, here's where it's a little tricky. Flip-flopped a lot of these films, but number 8 was Baby Boy by John Singleton, which kind of a strange choice, but let me explain why. I'm a huge John Singleton fan. Obviously Boys in the Hood, fantastic film. Even like Poetic Justice and Higher Learning, very hard-hitting dramas about, you know, Black Americans. I was about to say Black Americans in America, but, you know, Black culture in America, specifically, you know, people from South Central, from Watts, from the LA area, right? And I listened to a lot of hip hop back in the day, especially, you know, NWA, Snoop Dogg, Eazy-E, Dr. Dre. So I was very aware of that culture through the music, and just to see it depicted on screen, very novel. He's one of the first, right? If not the first. Him and I keep saying John Singleton again. Him and the Hughes brothers with Menace to Society, right? I watched those films over and over. So I was highly anticipating this film, Baby Boy, and to my surprise, it wasn't what I was expecting. And at the time, I thought it was going to be, you know, another hard-hitting, overly indulgent, overly preachy movie. But it wasn't that. It was like a very, at times, almost like a parody, almost like a dramedy as well. It's like these characters are so over the top, and when they bicker at each other, it's just so kind of grating. I didn't like it when I was a kid because probably I didn't understand the dynamics of the relationships. I probably, you know, never had a serious girlfriend before, so I didn't understand, you know, when you're in a serious relationship with somebody, especially like a sexual relationship, you're gonna have really, it's like an emotional roller coaster, right? You're gonna snap at each other and you're going to fight and disagree passionately, and then you're gonna make up. And I just didn't get that at the time. And seeing all the relationship dynamic now feels really real, even though it seems over the top the way they scream at each other. But it's real, you know. It's like when you love somebody, what do they say? You hurt the ones you, hurt the ones that you love the most, because the familiarity, right? You're just so familiar with each other and so close to each other that you know how to hurt them. Another thing that hits really closely to me is a situation. I still live with my parents. I still live at home, and it's a very hard thing for me to talk about, but I feel like I am the Jody character because, well, his name's Joseph, first of all, short for Joseph, and my name's Joseph. So, but I feel like I didn't really live up to my potential. I'm still working on it. Hopefully, I get one of my screenplays sell, and I can move my mom out of here. But until then, I still feel kind of like, I don't want to say useless, but I haven't found my value. I feel like that character. I just, all you do is eat, sleep, and shit is what the mom says. I'm trying, but apparently I'm not a very hard worker. I dislike manual labor. I try one thing, and then I'll quit. I'm a DJ, and then I was with an agency this year, and then it got too hard, and then I quit. So it really hits home to me. I don't have, thankfully, I don't have like baby mamas and daughters who I have to take care of. Maybe that's the thing that's keeping me kind of in stasis, is that I'm too comfortable. I'm too, there's nothing driving me to take the next step, even though I need desperately to move out of here, and I'd like to move my mom out of here with me, because we're kind of too. I'm like the Bradley Cooper, he takes his mom everywhere, or the Rami Malek, but I'm not an actor, so I can't afford to do that yet. But it really hits home to me, this film, and I really get the sense that he's trying, but he just doesn't know. The Jody, I'm going back to the movie now. The Jody character doesn't know what to do. He's just stuck in this rut, and he's trying. He tries to sell women's clothes, but he doesn't have the education. He has the ambition. I really relate to what the Ving Rhames character says to him. I forget his name, like Marcus or something. No, that's his name in Mission Impossible. Well, the Ving Rhames character is the stepdad. Well, he comes in and kind of forces his mom to tell him to move out, and obviously they have a contentious relationship. And he gives him some great advice. He tells him, you got guns and butter, right? I believe the analogy translates to, guns are like the things that you buy that appreciate in life, right? Like stocks, bonds, I guess today it'd be crypto, would be in that category as well of guns. And butter is all the stuff that depreciates, right? All of the clothes, the cars, the appliances, all the stuff that you flash, jewelry. I guess some jewelry, I don't know if they appreciate, but jewelry's, I guess, in the middle. But all the stuff that you buy to flash. And he tells Jody, like, all you do is buy butter. You just eat up all the butter. You buy the butter, and you need to learn the difference between that. And as as an aspiring businessman, I'm trying to start up a few businesses as well online. I'm a webmaster, and I'm trying to start a K-pop DJ company as well as a lot of YouTube channels, right? I'm trying to at least monetize one of those. But hearing that from a business perspective is a huge wake-up call. You need to hear that. It's common knowledge. I should know that. But thank you, Ving Rhames' character, for that. But yeah, man, a lot of cool moments in this film. Snoop Dogg, like, posting up at the Taraji Peak at Cookie's house, because he just got out of prison, and he still has a thing for her. And then, like, when she like wakes him up, like kicks him, and he's sleeping on the couch, and he's just like, damn girl. She can just, like, small stuff like that just really I forgot how much fun this movie is too at times. But a great message. And quick piece of trivia, Tupac was supposed to play Jody, and he kind of played him already in Poetic Justice, because he's playing like Sega Genesis at home. He has a baby mama too, and he has a daughter. The baby mom is like a crack addict, and him and Tone Loc like beat the shit out of the boyfriend, and he takes the daughter. But yeah, like I remember the mom in that was like, "Are you gonna get up off your ass and stop playing video games all day?" And he has a job though. He's a postman, but I could see the sentiment from of the mom. It's like, you have any more ambition? Like, you gotta go to school or do something. You can't just right. You need to rise above all this like street shit, you know, like, and that's the perspective that I've had. I'm like the black American. Like, I have this huge chip on my shoulder, right? I feel like the world owes me something, but the world doesn't owe me shit. You know, I got to go out there and get it. I got to go out there and take it. And nothing substitutes for hard work. And taken me like 20 years to realize that, and I'm still kind of a lazy bum, but at least I know, I'm aware of it, and I got to change that. So thank you, baby boy, for making me realize that. If only you can, put a reminder in my phone and remind me of that every day, because I'm very absent-minded. Anyway, that's my number 8, baby boy. Man, I really went off on a tangent there, didn't I? Number 7. How good are we on time? 120. Jesus, it's supposed to be an hour or less. All right, number 7, Y tu mamá también, Alfonso Cuarón. Man, I revisit this film a lot. It's such a fun. I didn't want to say fun because it's about, a woman who's dying of cancer, and great premise though, and these two kids who are like at odds with each other. They don't know it yet. They're charalastras. Is that what it is? Charalastra, if I remember correctly, and they're just like, I think it's some kind of fraternity kind of concept where they're just like bros for life. All they do is, yeah, it's a fascinating relationship. They just like jerk off in front of each other, sitting on the edge of a pool. I thought it was weird when I first saw that, but it's a very almost like European sense of openness with your sexuality, right? I think Alfonso Cuarón is Mexican, but it's a very Spanish European kind of sensibility and the openness of the sexuality, right? Like, there's a lot of sex in this film, almost to the point of like a Larry Clark film, but I don't think it's unnecessary. I don't think it's gratuitous. It informs the character. It informs the world we're living in. Like, these people love to engage in pleasure. They love to receive pleasure. They love to give pleasure. And I wish it was one of the films that I revisited, because it's not all the themes aren't very fresh in my mind. But I do remember just loving this film to death. Like, I love Alfonso Cuarón films. He's very confident in his style and his approach to portraying his characters. And all of the guys from the Mexican New Wave, Guillermo del Toro, and who's the other guy? The guy that did Amores Perros. I can't think of it right now, but yeah, all those guys are very good. So that's Y tu mamá también, and Diego Luna, and you can catch Diego Luna in Andor and Rogue One, and Gael Garcia Bernal in The Werewolf in the Night. So that new Marvel movie that's gonna come out soon. All right, number 6, Mulholland Drive. Don't want to talk about this too much, but I remember it being my first David Lynch film. Just because you remember those days where you go to like a Blockbuster or your local video store, just browsing VHS covers, DVD covers, and usually you see like critics 4 stars or masterpiece. So I was a huge like Roger Ebert fan back then, so I saw his review and said hypnotic, 4 stars. Watched it instantly and did not know what I was getting into, because me and my friend got high, as was my wont, as was my custom back then before movies. Bad idea. That movie feels like a nightmare, and it feels like a primal fucking dream that you can't wake up from. Ditto, another dark film, Lost Highway. So I didn't really get the mystery at the time, because I was probably too high, but seeing it now, it's very, very, well, I'll just use a simple term. It's just very confusing, very convoluted. it's convoluted, but like it makes sense at the end. Of course, you need to think about it deeply and maybe look it up on the frequently asked questions on IMDb. But it's there, and again, it's not one of the films I revisited recently, so I don't know really the plot details. But I do remember the two leads are stunning. Naomi Watts and Laura Harding, I want to say. Justin Theroux. And there's no other filmmaker like David Lynch. For better or worse, like, it's a vibe, as the kids would say. And you cannot replicate that. And that is by and far, like, we're talking about individualism before, individuality. Like, you want to talk about the auteur theory, like, no other person can match. There will be what's the term, what's the phrase, there will be copies, there will be people who try to imitate it. This is the real deal. This is the real deal here. This is the real thing. David Lynch, there's no other filmmaker like him. God bless his soul, man. That's Mulholland Drive. That's my number 6. Number 5 is another kind of dreamy, more kind of commercialized, more conventional sense of the dream, and that's Vanilla Sky. You can see where my sensibilities lie now that I have revealed myself, as Tom Cruise says to Jason Lee there. You have revealed yourself to me. I love it when he says that. It's so over dramatic. But yeah, Vanilla Sky, great film. I think it's his last great film, Cameron Crowe, and his last collaboration with I was about to say Jerry Maguire. His last collaboration with Tom Cruise there, who he made Jerry Maguire with. Yeah, I believe this and Almost Famous. He peaked with these films. I did a whole podcast with my friend on Almost Famous on our High Fidelity TV podcast. So look that up. Look that up on the YouTube. Just look up Almost Famous podcast, and I think we're gonna be up there. It's like a 2 or 3 hour podcast. We get into a lot of stuff. We get into it really deep, and I talk about Vanilla Sky, and man, this is such a great high concept. The thing that works about this film, even though the whole film's a dream, because it's him kind of recounting his life events in a lucid dream. The reason this film is so engaging is there's a mystery to its core. Is this a dream, or what happened to him? And then, is he dead? And then, did he really murder whoever he's in prison for? And all the answers to those questions is yes. I forgot what the questions were, but yes, he's in a dream. Yes, he killed. Oh wait, no, he didn't kill. He didn't kill. What's her name? The Penelope Cruz character. That was just the lucid dream gone wrong, right? He's just like, it's like it was supposed to be pleasant. He. Long story short, right? The basics of this film is he dies, or he gets disfigured, because he did actually go into the car with the Cameron Diaz character, and he's about to lose his company, and then he loses the girl of his dreams, and then he can't take it anymore, so he takes the pills. He takes pills and he dies, and then he, it's like a futuristic form of, after you die, you can just be in a suspended state of hibernation, be frozen, and then instead of being in a coma, well, it's like being in a coma, I guess, but instead of just like blankness and darkness, you get to live out like I think they call it like a virtual entertainment, where you can like pick your own adventures based on your favorite movies, your favorite albums, and then combine that with your real life. But then that lucid dream just goes horribly wrong, and then he's just stuck in this loop like a nightmare, where he's stuck in prison, and he killed the love of his life. And then a lot of timelines in here is very convoluted, but necessarily, because I believe that's what makes it engaging. The plot, anyway, I should say. But the film's not a masterpiece upon rewatch, because I think it over-explains too much at the end. It should just be like a 5-minute scene of exposition, but it becomes drawn out and is like over sentimental, like, oh, this happened, oh, and then that happened, and then he's just like over explaining things, which I get. I get how you feel. You don't have to tell me how you feel, show me. But the ending is a little bit heavy-handed, and the reason why it falls short of a masterpiece to me. It's still a great film. Cameron Crowe is probably one of his final great films. So that's number 5, Vanilla Sky. Number 4, my favorite Wes Anderson film of all time, The Royal Tenenbaums. I remember seeing a scene of this. Somebody brought it in to our screenwriting class in like '03 or '02, and I never seen one frame of a Wes Anderson film. Didn't know who Wes Anderson was. Maybe heard of Rushmore. Maybe saw the Criterion cover of Bottle Rocket and Rushmore and Royal Tenenbaums. But somebody brought in the opening scene of this, and it's that cool kind of rendition of Hey Jude, and was it by Mark Mothersbaugh? I believe it was. But yeah, it's a very cool like opening prologue. It's about these very intellectual literary family, and I never seen anything like it. It was just so original and novel, pun intended there. And the cast is amazing. Ben Stiller, Luke Wilson, Owen Wilson, Gwyneth Paltrow, Gene Hackman. God, was her not Allison? It was right there on the tip of my tongue, but I just lost it there. The matriarch. God, fuck me. I hate it when that happens. Fucking weed. But anyway, man, magnum opus, breezes by. Love all the characters. Love every scene in this movie. It feels like he hit his stride, like his world, right? His world's very specific. His characters are very specific. Some can say he's a little pretentious. I say he's worldly. He what I know now, he spends a lot of time in Paris. A podcaster saw him. One of the podcasts I listened to, they said they saw him just like writing in a cafe, and nobody approached him because I guess they respect him there. They respect him too much to not to hound him. I think he kind of does the same movie over and over now, so it's a little redundant. French Dispatch, I probably have to give it another shot, but I just feel everything's just kind of samey, and I don't know. Maybe to me, it's just I'm overly familiar with his style, and it does nothing for me anymore. Maybe my sensibilities are I've moved beyond it, past it. Royal Tenenbaums is my number 4 film. It's great soundtrack. Yeah, I think Rushmore, Royal Tenenbaums, Life Aquatic, may have peaked with Royal Tenenbaums, but I love the Life Aquatic as well. Kind of maybe a bit overindulgent, maybe a bit too weird, but I still love it. I think those are my favorite films. The early, late 90s to early 2000s era, Wes Anderson is my favorite. All right, moving on to number 3. Got a lot to talk about here with Bully by Larry Clark.
I don't understand what the hell is going on with you.
You guys don't work, you don't go to school, you don't do anything. All you do is lay around and drive your cars. You know how that makes me feel?
Mad.
Quick story about how I watched this film. Very funny. Again, as you know, I probably mentioned this a lot, but I used to smoke weed before I watched films. And I remember going all the way to the UCI Irvine, because they have a indie theater that shows, it wasn't showing a lot back then, so this is the only theater that was close to me. I had to drive pretty far for it, and I must have got my times mixed up or something, because I went to the parking lot. I went by myself, which I rarely did. I thought it was kind of weird to do that, but I went by myself, and may have gotten lost. I had to whip out my map there, or look up my printout of MapQuest, because there's no smartphones back then, and proceeded to smoke weed in my car. Got considerably high, as is my want, but I remember walking into the theater. I thought it was late. I looked at my clock. I think maybe my car clock was ahead or something, but I remember just being freaked out and just rushing into the theater, grabbing a seat, and the movie's already started. And lo and behold, I sat down. Very weird. I was like, this is a weird opening. Like, why is the score so moody? It feels like a climax. Like people are. It was that scene where everyone's just kind of checking in with all the characters, and they're just at home watching TV or just lying around. And next thing you know, it's like, did you say anything, Allie? Did you do this? I was like, what? I thought it was like one of those films that they show the ending first, and then it's like, oh, we're gonna find out what happens with the rest of the film, right? But nope, because right after that, cut to like they're in the courthouse, and then they're all like blaming each other, right? If you guys haven't seen the film, it's the murderer bully. It's the titular bully there, and so they've all got caught, and yeah, they're blaming each other, and then climactic music crescendos into like all of their sentencing, like Ali, whatever, life in prison, Dominic Semenik, 50 years, whatever, Derek Kaufman, life in prison, and then Marty Puccio, death by electric chair, and then zoop, music cuts off, crescendos, cut to black, directed by Larry Clark. I'm like, holy fucking shit, this is the end of the film. I remember a group next to me, who may or may not have smoked weed too, rushed in with me. They saw me rush in, and they probably thought the same thing. I swear, the times were off or something, because if they followed me, they probably thought they were late too. But I remember them just saying, "Jesus Christ, we watched. This is the end of the movie." Like they were so pissed. I was just so stoned. I'm like, all right, I'll just sit here and wait for the next screening. But yeah, that's don't smoke weed before a screening, and if it's like in the middle of the movie, don't sit through it, because you probably spoil yourself. So that's my advice for that. All right, Bully. Interesting tidbits I have here. Did you know that Larry Clark shot this really quickly? I believe it was like 3 weeks or like 21 days or something. He shot this like a TV show, because he needed to shoot another film, Ken Park, I believe, or it was the Teenage Caveman. I forget. But he had a bunch of films. He was a hot director at the time, relatively, I guess, because after Ken Park was banned in like a lot of European countries, like he was blacklisted. But at the time he was hot, and he pretty much kidnapped Brad Renfro because he really wanted him, and well, not just because of that, but because he was a drug addict. He was a heroin addict, and he pretty much forced him to be clean. He drove him to the set or the location that they're shooting in Florida, South Florida, and pretty much forced him to be clean. I think he was detoxing from coke, I believe. Yeah, he was detoxing from coke. So it only takes like a couple days to detox from that. And it was a very troubled time for Brad Renfro. I believe he, like, the times where he was not on set or his off days, or when he was done with his day, he would go stir up some trouble, go drinking, or he did something where he almost got arrested, or he did get arrested for like I don't know, letting a boat go or something. Like they're on the beach, right? So and then Bijou Phillips, not much love lost there, or I don't know if I'm using that term correctly, but basically she was like a party animal. She was like the Paris Hilton before Paris Hilton was Paris Hilton, right? She's just known for being a party animal, a club brat, or is it club brat? I don't know. Person who clubs a lot, So she was famous for that, and she unashamedly like slept with a lot of producers. That's how she got a lot of roles. So little trivia there. Ashton Kutcher read for the role of Bobby Kent, the titular bully. I can't see that now, but Nick Stahl was perfectly cast. I love his like asshole face. You know, you can't act your way to be a bully. I guess you can, but if you don't have it in your face, like face is what you see first, right? So it's in his face there. So I don't want to get into this too much. I'm talking about this film too much already, but I was a huge Larry Clark fan. Kids, Another Day in Paradise, and so when I needed to see this film, you know, when I saw it on the paper in the calendar section, I'm like, just, I ripped it out. I'm like, I gotta go fucking see this, you know. Michael Pitt, like I said, Bijou Phillips, Nick Stahl. So this movie's so anxiety inducing. Like when you're high, like forget about it. But I watched this sober, and that scene where, you know, spoilers, they're about to kill him and they're just like hyping themselves up to do it, gives me chills every time. And you cannot get this mood. It's such a rare feeling, right? Just such a visceral, uneasy feeling you get watching this film, especially the climactic, you know, murder scene, and then thereafter when they're all kids, you know, so it's like they're just playing games, and then the moment when like Derek Kaufman, the bully played by Leo Fitzpatrick, like starts like testing them, like saying, oh, who's gonna do this, who's gonna do that, and they're all kind of like in doubt at first, even when they're planning it, right? They're like, even Donnie, played by Michael Pitt, was like, this is some heavy shit, like, you're really gonna do this and stuff like that. But like when the hitman enters, like they're just kind of, it shows you how powerful peer pressure is, because they're just kind of, at that point, they're just like trying to impress this hitman, you know, like, oh, you think I'm just all talk? No, like, I'm gonna do this. Like, they're just trying to show themselves, you know, trying to prove themselves to this guy. Who is this guy? You just met him. You know, why do you need to prove yourself to this guy? It's all, you know, chauvinistic male teenage angst that you need to kind of one up, prove yourself to be badass, to be hip, to be cool. And it's so accurate. You know, I remember watching this as a kid. I was relatively young when I saw it. I was in college, but I just, you know, recently got out of high school, so related 100% to these characters who got high all the time. But that aspect of like peer pressure, right? It's just like, I did a lot of things. Thankfully, I didn't do extreme things like that, but I did a lot of things that I regret. Looking back now, just to be cool, just to not be in the loop. Like the fear of that was like greater than anything as a kid, right? And then you look, obviously, hindsight is 2020 now, but you look back on it, and you're like, boy, was I stupid. I just did all that for clout, for street rep, for to be cool, to be in with these people. Like, fuck. Think for yourself. Like, rise above that. Anyway, yeah, the moments where they're just all like reeling from that, and you know, the Rachel Miner character, I forget her name, the Marty's girlfriend, who like masterminded the whole thing, and then she was like starting to freak out after, you know, like, throwing knives in the ocean, and then I didn't do shit, and I didn't do shit. You stabbed him 50 times, dude. The blade didn't win it this much. And then like Leo Fitzpatrick's character is just like, oh, so we're talking about who did what and who did not, right? So I think we have to have a serious talk about this, and just them like conspiring and just like getting their story straight. Like, you know, you're gonna go down. None of these guys, they're kids. They can barely keep a secret, like when as pertains to gossip, let alone if somebody got murdered. That shit is like undeniable that they're gonna let that leak. So great performances all around. Larry Clark's masterpiece. I don't think he didn't have a chance to get to this point again. So I think at this point he's making all these like direct to video, direct to streaming, like Marfa Girl. I think he did like, was it Rockers? Like Skaters? No, Rockers, I think it was. About like skaters, right? It was like a raunchy Ferris Bueller's Day Off kind of thing, which, What's Up Rockers, that was it. What's Up Rockers, which I sound like '06 with like Scanner Darkly at the UCI Irvine. I remember seeing it there. So yeah, that guy, wow. what happened? Like Ken Park was okay. You could tell he's like a very provocateur, right? He's just like he wants to show you these things to shock you, and with no other intention than that. There's really no character motivation for showing all these naked teenagers all the time. But I guess that was his style. That was his way to be recognized. So you cannot get away with that today, right? Woke culture and the internet will not forgive you for that. So for that alone too, it's like a relic. Watching that today really is a time capsule of the times and of this very controversial and mixed bag kind of director, but it's his masterpiece. So that's my number 3, Bully. I highly recommend it. Number 2, AI, artificial intelligence. Don't want to get into this too long, but for reasons of the being of the brainchild of two cinematic legends in Steven Spielberg and Stanley Kubrick, I would highly recommend somebody watch this if they haven't seen it. It combines, that cold, dark Brit sci-fi of Stanley Kubrick, of his films like 2001 and A Clockwork Orange, with a softer sensibility of E.T. or Close Encounters of the Spielberg sensibility, right? But oddly enough, I was reading a lot about this. All the stuff that you think came from Kubrick came from Spielberg. All the stuff that you think came from Spielberg came from Kubrick, right? All the warm stuff, the mommy stuff, was Kubrick's idea, and all like the dark flesh fair stuff came from Spielberg, which is very, I don't want to say, not, it's contrarian is the wrong word, but like it's very, opposite of what you thought it would have been, right? Very interesting, but I think the flesh fair stuff is a little mixed for me. It's supposed to feel like a different movie, like second act is supposed to spin it off into a different movie, but it doesn't work that well to me. It feels like a different movie. It feels like, an adventure buddy movie. Whereas, all the stuff in the house with him and all the troubles with the mom and the dad and the son who wakes up, and then that stuff is really, really cold and dark and ironic. I don't know if I'm using that term properly, but unique. You don't see that stuff in mainstream cinema, and makes you feel uneasy, very creepy, and ditto the final 20 minutes where he goes into this rut, he's in a deep depression when he finds his maker, and he finds he's not real, and there's he's been mass produced. He's the original David, the Haley Joel Osment character David, who's a robot child, meets his maker, and I believe played by William Hurt, who says, wait here, the whole team wants to meet you, the team of engineers that created him, right? And he's like, wait here, and then he doesn't return for an hour, it seems like, and then David just commits suicide, just plops in from the building into the water, because New York City is overrun, Manhattan's overrun by it's become like an island, or it's overrun by water, right? I don't know what that term is called, but ditto the ending, which is very sentimental. He sees a bunch of humanoid machines. They've just become so sentient and so evolved to the point where they just project images in their mind, and they can fly in these little cubicle things and kind of relay information without talking. I kind of like that. I always like that about sci-fi, just thinking about what the future would be like. And they're he's the last remains of the genius of human beings, right? I don't know if you would call them that, but I guess we are genius in some sense. We're very I don't want to get into it, but we're just very sci-fi teaches us that we're just very wasteful and not very efficient, and can't think of any other words to put us down there. But I think the ending works. I think the emotional crutch of the film is David. His want, that's his inner want, right? He needs to go back to his mother. He wants to be desired again. That's the whole basis of his existence. He needs. He was imprinted to Monica, his the mom that imprints him in the beginning, right? So he just wants to be loved by her and spend one more day with her. And then I think it really works. And I know everyone thinks it's a Spielberg thing, but it was a Kubrick thing, and it gives the film a much needed kind of emotional core to an otherwise kind of cold and dark, harsh sci-fi future vision of the future. Future vision of the future? That doesn't make sense. You know what I mean. Vision of the future. That's my number 2, AI, artificial intelligence. Spielberg got a little dark here this period with his sci-fi films, between this, Minority Report, and War of the Worlds. I know he did 2 films in 2002. I know he did Minority Report and Catch Me If You Can, which is more lighthearted, but wow, War of the Worlds, and yeah, he's dark period for Spielberg there, huh? It's going through something. Anyway, number 1, I don't want to talk about this too much because it is Ghost World.
Hey, what you think you're doing? Shut up that damn noise! Rock and roll, baby. Freedom of speech.
That guy rules.
They can't believe we made it. We graduated high school. How totally amazing.
And I'll speak about it briefly, but if you want to hear my in-depth thoughts on the film, go ahead and check us out on the High Fidelity TV podcast. After the show High Fidelity ended, we wanted to continue talking about films and like record related films that films that feature records in them, or like have like a collector sensibility about the film. So we talked about High Fidelity the film. We talked about Ghost World. I think the latest. Well, we talked about Scratch, the 2001 documentary, and then. Oh, you know what? Scratch is. I did not think to talk about Scratch, but Scratch is in my honorable mention. But you could also hear my in-depth thoughts about that on our podcast. That's the High Fidelity TV podcast, I believe. If you type in High Fidelity podcast on YouTube, we are one of the top ones. But if you type in Ghost World podcast, we are, I believe, the only one there. So if you want to hear me and my friend Edwin's thoughts about Ghost World in depth, check us out. Type in Ghost World podcast. It should be under the High Fidelity TV podcast YouTube channel. But yeah, this film is something I watch like at least once a year. It's a film I quote with my friends, especially Edwin, on like a day-to-day, if not weekly, if not day-to-day basis. All the sensibilities of this film I related to. Back in the day, I felt like an outcast, so I felt like those are my people, and it's really nice to have a community, if it's just fictional characters. I know the filmmakers think that way. So Daniel Klaus wrote about these characters, and all of his characters in his comic books are kind of misanthropic. So, and it's a fun film. It's a parody about about like overconsumption about everyone's like a sports fan. Like you go to the scene in the sports bar where everyone's like drinking and cheering the sports team, the sports on the TV, instead of listening to that blues musician that Seymour came to see. And all the women everyone's like obese, because we eat too much, and comically so, right? Like the lady that orders popcorn when Enid's working in the theater, like, oh yeah, give me a lot of butter, right? And she's like, oh, here you go, dipped in smothered in delicious yellow chemical sludge. And that scene where Seymour's like the I don't want to say fat, I guess it's the overweight women who are walking with like 5 children and a stroller, and he's like, Jesus Christ, have some more kids, why don't you? What are we, in slow motion? Like, you can tell like they have a real disdain for like blindly over consuming and buying whatever that's popular and trending. And it's very relevant today, because we're still like that, if not more so, with social media and all the algorithms of ads that sell us what have you, whatever our preferences are on Facebook, on Instagram, anything. With a click of a button now, it's there. Amazon will come on Amazon Prime in the next day. So we're buying off a lot more than we can chew. That's for damn sure. And Ghost World is a highly relevant film for that, to comment on that culture. And it was relevant then, and it's relevant now. And that's not why I chose it as my number 1. It's just my personal favorite film for the longest time. But I'll take that win. It's surprisingly relevant for the time. So score that for me, for why that's my number 1. But if you've listened to this, if you listened to me ramble this far, thank you so much. I am thinking about starting a Patreon, because I don't know how long I could do this for free. So if you enjoy my content, please consider donating and clicking on the Patreon link below. I don't know if I'll have time to do that, but if it's there, please click on it. I know, so unprofessional, right? But that concludes my list of top 10 films of 2001. Please stay tuned for the next episode, which I will be talking about with my co-host, as yet unnamed, surprise guest. He's not a celebrity, not yet anyway, but I guess I gave that away, that he's a he. But looking forward to that. It's going to be our top 10 films of 2002. Probably be a little bit longer, since not by 2 or anything, but I'm really excited for that. So please stay tuned for that. And please check out past episodes on the blog at thelazerboy.wordpress.com, and look us up on YouTube in the search engine for past episodes. That is The Lazerboy with a Z. Thank you guys so much for listening, and hope to see you on the next one. Take care. Bye.
Do you serve beer or any alcohol?
After about 5 minutes of this movie, you're gonna wish you had 10 beers.